Yun gets ready to head out of his otaku cave, ready to board a plane headed for the next anime expo that he's been dying to attend. He's been watching a lot of anime recaps, and can't wait to get his hands on all the limited edition merchandise of his favorite waifus. But as he boards his plane, Yun finds himself in a different world, realizing that he's been isekai'd in a land of magic, dragons, and waifus riding on dragons. Yun's greatest fantasies are about to come true, setting his sights to becoming the greatest harem king in isekai history. He heads for the nearest magic academy, realizing that it would be the best place to find his first lady companion, but quickly finds himself in front of a big magical stone, where a hooded girl announces that the stone can judge the power level of an individual. Yun steps up, confident that he'll be an overpowered main character, and as he places his hand on the stone, a blinding light surprises all who witness the extremely rare occurrence. But Yun is surprised when everyone begins to laugh. The hooded girl explains that the color of the light indicates a person's elemental source, but that a white indicates a lack thereof, claiming that Yun has no magical power. However, the other hooded girl looks closer into the stone, claiming that Yun isn't complete trash, since she sees a small ray of green light as thick as a strand of hair. Yun walks out in shame, feeling like a pathetic loser for getting his hopes up for no goddamn reason. He finds a tree where he can cry alone, when a grandpa comes by his side, telling him that the green light represents the wood element, and is a rare magic that makes for a great gardener. He puts out his hand, claiming that they can make the most beautiful garden in the world together. Although he isn't happy about the boring profession, Yun realizes that it's better than crying by a tree all day, and decides to commit to his new craft, making full use of the one and only ability in his arsenal, accelerating the growth of plants. One day, Yun hears some voices in the distance, and sneaks a peek at a student uglier than himself, confessing his love to a beautiful girl, who instantly spots Yun behind the bushes. She orders the two to catch Yun, so they chase him down, locking him in place until the hottie catches up. She tells him that she doesn't care what he heard, but if anyone at the school finds out, she'll push her icicle into one of his holes and make it come out the other.
Damn!
After an encounter that made him fear for his life, Yun realizes that this world is tough on the weak, so he asks the grandpa if there is a way to gain more power for a weak gardener like him. The grandpa tells him that in his youth, he acquired power greater than the strongest magicians in this world. Yun's eyes light up, and the grandpa tells him of the existence of fairies, legendary creatures that are strongest among the magical beasts that humans can form contracts with. During his time, the grandpa was a fairy seeker, spending his entire life seeking its existence, until finally, he came across a fairy seed. He spent many years trying to grow a fairy from the seed, but his youth has disappeared, so he hands the task over to his apprentice. Excited by his chance to make something out of his pitiful existence, Yun tries all sorts of methods to manifest a fairy, but none are successful. He puts all 5 of his brain cells to work, and thinks about all those anime recaps he watched, remembering that in most cases, contracts with familiars are bonded with blood. He tries his luck, and thinks it didn't work as he puts his head down, but sure enough, the seed lights up. He takes a walk, hoping to think of something else since he never saw the glowing light, when he hears the same voices from the other day. The ugly student compliments her legs, while the other barks like a dog, hoping she likes the double cheeseburger. She tells them that they deserve a reward, letting one get on top, but to Yun's surprise, she bites on his neck and sucks his blood as she transforms into a devilish succubus. She tells the other boy that he's next, but the other boy shouts that she underestimates the power of a Xiaoyu Academy magician. He powers up and sends out floating fists of boulders to attack his enemy, but she easily shoots them down with her vines. He tries to run, but her vines wrap him up before she sucks him dry, as Yun witness all the events unfold. He runs as far as he can, hoping that she didn't catch his wind, but she appears next to him in the blink of an eye. He tries to run, but she wraps him up and pierces through his gut. As he thinks about setting the record for the fastest main character death of an isekai, a beam of light shoots to the sky, and a flower as red as the color of his blood blooms under a red moon while manifesting a majestic fairy. Yun's main character hopes are revived, thinking that she'll call him her lord, but she tells him that she was born from blood, revived from the pits of hell, claiming that she's here to take his life. She tries to take his soul, but to her surprise, her magic doesn't work on him. The succubus states that she'll suck them both dry, But the fairy cuts the vines that bond Yuen, claiming that she won't let anyone else take his life. She senses that he used all his mana to summon her, so at an amazing speed, she strikes the succubus down, siphoning her mana in order to save Yuen's life. Yuen wakes up in the aftermath and looks up to see a beautiful crimson fairy, realizing that the seed just required more of his blood to blossom. He fantasizes about the fantasies he'll make true with his first waifu, but she cuts it short, asking him if he doesn't recognize her yet. He tells her that they definitely never met, telling her that he never forgets the face of a 9 out of 10. He thanks her for saving him, but she tells him that she saved him so she could kill him herself, before she dashes with her sword pointing at her target. But to her surprise, the damage inflicted leaves Yuen unharmed, and instead appears on herself. She tries again, but the result doesn't change. Yuen realizes that they have some sort of physical connection, so he tests his theory by touching his chest, and feels the softness of a woman's snuggle pups for the first time in his life. His virgin brain won't allow his hand to move away, and after avoiding her blade, he puts his hands back on God's gift to man, as she promises him that she'll set his nuts on fire one day. Just then, the chairman of Xiaoyu Academy shows up, telling the fairy to calm her big tippies, claiming that she will never be able to hurt her own summoner. She gives Yuen an ancient fairy book, and as he chants a special command, the fairy is captured back into her seed, and placed inside the book with her name displayed below her avatar. Percy explains that the book will help Yuen on his quest to acquire fairies, but tells him that it is the property of the school, and if he wants to use the book, he'll have to attend Xiaoyu Academy as a student. She gives her personal invitation to attend, but tells him that he must do her a favor as well, putting him on a quest to find a vampire hiding in the school grounds as a student. He tells her that he's too chicken to face a vampire, but she tells him that she'll give him 3 fairy seeds if he takes the quest, so he kisses her feet, telling her that his body is hers to command.
Perfect.
While reading the book at night, the book's fairy begins to speak, hinting that he can unlock tremendous power from the fairies if he develops a stronger bond, and can only do so by entering the fairy world. It explains that all fairies were once human, and the fairy world is comprised of the memories of a fairy from their previous life. Yuen must complete the quest inside the memory world by helping the fairy come to terms with the horrific events of their past. But the book says that the spiritual power required to enter the fairy world is immense, and his current level of power is insufficient. The book then transfers itself into Yuen's phone, and tells him that it'll be more convenient for him than carrying around a big book. The next day, Yuen goes to school, and everyone stares at him, knowing that he's the ugly loser who scored the lowest magical power on the stone. A bully decides to throw a power crystal at Yuen, hoping to humiliate him for being weak. But Yuen picks it up, and everyone is shocked when a radiant green light shines brightly from the crystal, which shows a strong attribute in the wind element. The test crystal even explodes from Yuen's extraordinary power, setting a record for the youngest to have ever exploded a test crystal at the school. Suddenly, Yuen's eyes change as he sets eyes on a cute classmate before grabbing her hand, calling her a beautiful lady, and asking her on a date. She runs since she can't handle that overwhelming amount of riz as the virgin boys implode. Yuen regains his senses, having no memory of what just happened. The book fairy explains that he absorbed the mana of a succubus and has also formed a contract with a fairy, not only reshaping his mana color into a wind element and providing him with incredible power, but also giving him the ability to charm others, since it is the main attribute of a succubus. Yuen instantly becomes popular with the girls of his school, but also makes a jealous enemy, who challenges Yuen to a duel. The instructor approves the duel, and the princess of the Orpheus Empire, one of the 3 kingdoms on the Dahlia continent, along with her guard, Rai, who is rumored to be the disciple of the dragon god, decide to spectate the duel. Yuen panics as the battle starts, and Kai doesn't hesitate to send out a flurry of attacks using his wind element. But Yuen musters up his courage, and sends out a vine whip that takes out Kai in one blow. Everyone cheers, including the princess, but Yuen faints from using up too much of his mana. In the next moment, Yuen opens his eyes to find himself in a strange place, where he encounters a little girl in a hood, who tells him that she's cold. He takes her into town and tries his best to get her warmed up when 2 thugs approach, claiming that the little girl has nice skin and can be sold for a very high price. They knock Yuen aside and carry the girl away, but Yuen grabs her back and tries to run until he is knocked down by a bat. He gets kicked around while covering for her as she opens her eyes and thanks him for his help. Just then, Yuen wakes up to find himself back in the real world, resting in the nurse's office. The book spirit tells him that he entered Faye's fairy world while asleep, as Ewan realizes now that the little girl was the human version of Faye. He thinks about what he just saw, realizing that she probably had a tough life back then. He tries to talk to her through the phone, but she tells him that he's an ugly trash and doesn't think she can look at his disgusting face for more than 2 seconds.
Emotional damage!
Just then, a few students walk in as Ewan decides to hide his presence. He hears 2 female voices who tell another boy to relax.
Lord have mercy. We must stay focused, brothers.
Ewan hears the rustling of the bed fabric and begins to think that he's missing out on the fun, but begins to sense the same type of mana of the succubi from before, realizing now that the boy is a goner. He wants to help, but he shivers in fear. Faye can sense the emotions of her master, so she calls Ewan a useless chicken and tells him to summon her, claiming that she can grow her powers by eating the mana of powerful vampires. However, the vampires already claimed their victim and turned their attention to Ewan since they knew he was there from the start. But a third walks in, and the 2 succubi call him king, as we find out that Rai is the mysterious vampire that Ursi has been searching for. Rai tells them to leave Ewan, since they don't want to attract any unnecessary attention on school grounds. At home, Ewan begins to lose his mind, believing that he has a target on his back, thinking that the vampires are probably looking for him at this very moment. He whacks one out in the bathroom to calm the nerves before making dinner, but as soon as he goes for the first bite, he hears footsteps outside. He sees the hand of a female figure and decides that a preemptive strike will give him the advantage, but is shocked to see that he knocked out the princess. He brings her to his bed, hoping that she won't remember the punch, but he used too much energy worrying for his life today, so he decides to lay down for a quick nap. The princess eventually wakes up and screams, punching him in the face and kicking him in the nuts for violating a princess. She asks him how far he took his crimes, but he tells her what happened and promises that he didn't touch her. She tells him that it's a crime to let the princess sleep in a trash dump like this, and he realizes that his head is on the line, so he decides to get on her good graces by making her instant noodles, recognizing that no person can resist the delicacy of the dish. His plan works to perfection, but begins to wonder why the most heavily guarded person in the school is alone at his home, remembering now that the vampires earlier were talking about taking out the princess. Just then, the 2 hear the footsteps of heels before Ewan's front door is destroyed. Ewan acted quickly, hiding in his basement as the vampires search the entire house. He knows that it's a matter of time before they find him, so he goes for another preemptive strike, wrapping them up in his vines
Yeah, boy.
while the 2 make their escape. Ewan tells her to hide out of sight as he prepares to deal with his enemy. They charge at him while he chants the words of summoning as Faye materializes her form and charges at her enemy. She sends out a mighty slash and follows up with the Graves of Hell, calling upon the blazing flowers that burn her victims. However, Rai arrives, seemingly coming to the enemy's rescue, but he slashes them down and claims that Ewan is next. The book fairy tells Ewan that he's a level 8 knight, far stronger than Faye can handle in her current state. Ewan telepathically asks Faye what they should do, but Faye fights on, telling him they won't lose, and claiming that she will not die until she has her revenge against his ugly ass face.
Just go to the office.
What'd I do?
Just go to the office.
What'd I do?
Go, just go!
What'd I
He tells her that she's got the wrong guy, but she tells him that he's ridiculous, stating that she'll make him remember before the day she stabs him through the chest. The fight rages on, but Faye seems to always be a step behind her powerful opponent. The book fairy tells Ewan that they can increase her strength if they can form a stronger bond. Since Faye hates his guts, Ewan's only option to form a stronger bond is to complete the quest inside the fairy world. But the book fairy reiterates that his spiritual power isn't enough. Just then, Anne reveals herself from the bushes and tells Ewan that she's a spiritual master. Rai sees the princess and hesitates to complete his mission to kill her since he's grown fond of her, but eventually shakes it off as he attacks. Faye blocks, and the princess thought she saw someone familiar, but Ewan blocks her vision, telling her to close her eyes. She protests his stupid games, but he doesn't want her to be heartbroken by Rai's betrayal, so he bribes her with free instant noodles for the rest of the year. She accepts and agrees to supply him with the spiritual power to enter the fairy world. Rai overpowers Faye and charges up his next attack targeting the princess, but Faye takes the hit, allowing Ewan to transport into the fairy world unharmed. In the fairy world, Ewan sees an older version of Faye slaying a thug as another begs for his life. Faye tells the thug to never appear in front of her again as she walks away, but the thug tries a sneak attack and ends up hugging the floor forever. Yuen tries to make contact with her like he did the time before, but realizes that this time, he can't interact with the people in the fairy world. Faye receives her payment for dealing with the thugs, as we find out that she is a notorious killer, who works for the Eastern District's gang in town. On the way home, she meets a man with a ponytail, who asks Faye if she likes cats. She ignores him, and instead asks him how much he wants for the sword. He tells her that it's not for sale, but she tells him that everything has a price. Yuen looks at the guy, and is shocked to see that the man is a better-looking doppelganger of him. The man continues to stay around the area, and Faye sees his kindness towards the children, who give him a flower for being a Chad. He takes a big whiff and looks up to greet Faye, who gets startled by his Chad-like tactics. On another occasion, the man protects a child from some thugs, and when she passes by, Faye is reminded of the time when a man protected her in the same way, so she intervenes, and the thugs immediately recognize Faye and run away in fear. He thanks her for her help and offers his sword as compensation. She remembers that he said it isn't for sale, but he tells her that he's not selling it. Rather, he's giving it away. She tells him that it's rare for weak and kind people like him to have survived this long, and tells him that in exchange for the sword, she'll help him whenever he's in danger. Yuen watches all the events unfold, and the book fairy tells him that the man is literally the better version of him in every way. But Yuen isn't fooled, recognizing that the guy is too perfect in his pickup strategy, realizing that his tactics are carefully thought through like one of those dating simulation games. Yuen says that the dude has been scoping out his prey, and even sat next to some boxes of trash, since he knew that Faye takes the alleyway to get home every day. But the biggest giveaway was the cat, believing that the best way into a girl's heart is through cute animals. And to go even further, he acted like a protector of children, and prepared a sword to give away from the start. But Yuen knows that the guy had no business ever carrying around a random sword that he doesn't even know how to use. Yuen realizes that the man thinks of this entire situation as a game, and thinks that Faye is in grave danger if she falls for him. Meanwhile, Faye stands her ground against Rai's onslaught, but feels that she won't be able to last much longer taking his attacks head on. Rai charges his sword, aiming for the princess, but Faye intervenes once again, and this time, she takes the full force of the attack through her chest, allowing her to activate her vines that immobilize him using her blood. He knows that this ability requires her blood, and asks her if her life is worth saving those two. But she looks back at Yuen, conflicted by the similarities, along with the differences of the man who betrayed her in the past, hoping that she'll have her answer once he returns. Time moves differently in the fairy world, as it's been several days for Yuen without being able to interact with anyone. But one day, he yells at the man hitting on Faye, calling him a shameless human being. And to his surprise, the man looks back at him and asks him if he feels better letting out his frustration. Yuen is surprised, so the man tells Yuen that he can see him since they share the same soul. He tells Yuen that he is his future self, and informs him that every person he's met since he isekai'd here are all just NPCs in a game, and that there's no need to care for them like human beings. But Yuen tells him that he's wrong, claiming that he's felt the emotions of the people in this world, and that whether it's a game or not, the people in this world have souls. He adds that there is no way that they're the same person, saying he would never treat people like characters in a game. Thinking that he's still too naive, future Yuen walks away, and decides to visit Faye, who immediately pins him down since no one ever knocks on her door. He tells her that her greeting is very warm, and that it makes his heart beat faster for her. She asks him if there's someone he needs killed, but he tells her that he's just here to give her some delicious treats. She feels bad for ruining his gift, but he grabs her hand and tells her that he'll get her more next time before he leaves. Over time, future Yuen continues to seduce her with his maxed out riz, sharing tales of his travels to the busiest trading ports and cities under trees in the Ragat Kingdom. He tells her of a house that he owns, next to a field of beach flowers and a beautiful lake that stretches all the way out to the edge of the world. He puts his hand out on one knee, asking her to leave with him to paradise, away from this forsaken town. Yuen watches on, wondering how this guy can make up all this bullshit on the fly. Future Yuen also uses his cooking as part of his plan, and when she burns herself, he immediately pounces on that finger with his mouth, sealing her fate as she takes lethal damage. She confesses to him that she's the most notorious killer in town, to which he responds by telling her that he hates killing, but that he doesn't hate her at all since it was her means to survive in this harsh reality. She gives him a smile, and Yuen gets frustrated that he's powerless as future Yuen gives him a devious smirk. Soon after, Faye saves enough for tickets to leave town, so Faye gives her notice to the East District's leader, who warns her about the man she's been seeing, claiming that he probably just wants to get in her pants, and tells her that she's going to get hurt. But she ignores his warning and walks out with her last paycheck. She meets with future Ewan, who tells her that they'll meet at the top of the lighthouse in 3 days' time. When the time comes, Faye packs her stuff and heads for the rendezvous point first thing in the morning. She waits with a smile, eager to set sail with the love of her life. 3 days and 3 nights go by, and Faye continues to wait, clinging on to the non-existent hope that he got stuck in traffic for 3 days. But on the 4th day, the Eastern District leader shows up, telling her that everything was a trap set up by the Western District. The Western District thugs surround the light tower and land a bomb at the top that injures Faye. Faye gets up, and the first thing she thinks about is future Ewan's safety, hoping that he's not in trouble because of her. She runs down and slices through all those who get in her way. The thugs threaten to kill an innocent girl, but Faye is too quick with her sword as she easily liberates the girl from danger. But as she looks to Faye for comfort, the little girl stabs Faye in the gut. She calls out to future Ewan, who finally makes his appearance next to the Western District men. Faye is happy to see that he's safe, while the little girl runs to him and tells him that he was right, that killing this woman would be easier than killing an ant. It is then revealed that future Ewan was collaborating with the Western District from the start, planning to keep Faye distracted while they overtake the entire town. Faye is held down by the thugs, while she thinks about all the times she spent with future Ewan, unaccepting of the betrayal that is her reality, as she begins to cry. Just then, future Ewan shows his true colors, betraying not just Faye, but also betraying his employers, summoning his fairies that leave none alive. Faye's rage continues to grow, and despite the life-threatening injury already sustained, Faye picks up her sword, shouting that she'll have her revenge. A fairy blocks, and he tells her that she'll die from blood loss if she keeps this up, but she doesn't stop, driven by the madness brought upon her, until her sword finally breaks and she falls to her knees. As she bleeds out, future Ewan tells her that he can give her a second chance, claiming that she should cling on to life and seek her revenge against him in the next life. He tells her that he travels the world, seeking worthy souls who have the will to become the strongest magical creatures of this world. He asks Faye if she chooses to die slowly until she bleeds out, or if she chooses a life of power, immortality, and revenge. She tells him that if it means becoming a monster to take his life, then she will gladly sell her soul to the devil. And with that, future Ewan summons the devil's flower, bonding her soul to the fairy seed as she awaits to be released from her prison. After witnessing all the events unfold, Ewan charges at future Ewan, but falls straight to the floor. Ewan asks him how he could be so cruel, but he tells Ewan that he's just playing the game, helping the NPCs evolve into a higher form. He tells him again that they're the same soul, telling him that he knows about Ewan's dreams of becoming a harem king, but tells him that he's too weak, and that he can only achieve his ambitions with powerful fairies by his side. Future Ewan tells him that he's doing everything for him, and tells him to not take things so seriously, asking him if he ever thought about the NPC's feelings when playing a game. Ewan keeps to his ideals, claiming that he felt the hearts and emotions of the people in this world, and that this world is more than just a game. But future Ewan tells him again that he's weak, claiming that his mortal ideals will change once he manifests his true power as a god of this world. Before he disappears, Ewan turns his attention to Faye, determined to rescue her from her prison. Ewan remembers that the last time, a large pool of his blood was required to release Faye from her prison the first time around, so he decides to sacrifice himself the same way. The book fairy tells him that the fairy world is built by his spiritual power, and that if he dies in this world, he may never wake up in the real one. But his resolve is clear as he climbs up to his first crush, claiming that he'll be the protagonist of the story today, kissing his first crush and sacrificing himself for her freedom as he falls directly onto the sword. Through his sacrifice, Faye is able to see the real Ewan's presence while replaying all the moments of her life, realizing that there truly were two separate Ewans acting against fate. She opens her eyes and removes the shackles that bind her soul as she appears in her fairy form. She sits by his side, shedding tears for the man who sacrificed himself out of love. She tells him to wake up, pleading to him that she doesn't want to be alone. She begins to think that she's cursed to live a life of solitude. But as she walks away, Ewan grabs her ankle and tells her that he's touched. He tells her he heard everything, and tells her that she can be a normal, non-psychotic bitch after all. She points her sword, so he tells her that he's sorry, claiming that he was left no riz since future Ewan took all of it. She accepts his apology, telling him that she prefers this version of him anyways. As he gets ready to teleport back to the real world, Faye holds his hand and tells him they're in this together. Yuen regains his senses, and the princess faints from exhaustion. He puts her down gently, telling her that he'll take it from here. He tells Faye to come, and she transforms into a beam of light that coats him, transferring her powers and becoming one with her master. Yuen appears in his first fairy form, as the power surges throughout his body. He charges forward, and a punch is enough to send Rai flying back. Yuen sends out his thorns, but Rai slices it up, before attacking in close range. The fight rages on, but Yuen lands a kick, sending Rai flying up before countering with a blade attack. The two fight at lightning speed, but Rai can't keep up as he gets bashed into the ground. Rai powers up, charging forward to be met by Yuen's fist, as Rai wonders how this guy got so powerful. Before Yuen overpowers Rai, ending the fight in his victory. As Rai lies knocked out, Yuen realizes that they unfused, and tells Faye that the fusion skill is incredible. She thanks him, and he continues by telling her that he likes being inside her, and tells her that they can restructure her inner fairy world together. She agrees, but he begins to feel up her horns, commenting that the texture is very smooth before she punches him in the face. The book fairy tells him that a fairy's horn is the stamen, similar to a plant, which is used for reproduction. Ursi makes her appearance, congratulating Yuen for completing the vampire mission. She keeps her promise, giving him 2 fairy seeds for his reward. The next day in class, Yuen is exhausted from being awake for a year in the fairy world, when his moment of peace is interrupted by the announcement of 2 new transfer students, who turn out to be none other than the princess and Faye. The boys in the class can't be more excited, but are shocked when the 2 choose to sit next to Yuen, and tells him that she had fun last night, and asks him if he slept well after staying up so late together, while the boys can't believe what they're hearing. Faye tells her that he didn't sleep well, and Anne comments that they must have taken too much out of him, as Faye agrees. The virgins lose their shit, chasing after Yuen for being a greedy boy, and taking the 2 hottest girls before they ever had a chance. After finding out the instructions to activating his new fairy seeds, Yuen grows lilies during the night, and throws the red seed into the lake. Meanwhile, we find out that Rai survived, as he reports into the Vampire King, who berates him for failing at his task to assassinate the princess. After finding out about the fairies, the Vampire King sends Rai out on another mission, to assassinate the master of the fairies, and capture the fairies for their cause. Back to Yuen, 7 days pass, and finally, the lake begins to light up with a glow of red before a beam of light shoots up into the sky, and a large lily takes shape, blooming its petals as a beautiful fairy appears. Faye looks up, but realizes that something isn't right as the fairy looks down with hostility. She attacks, but before the 2 sides can clash, another beam appears as the 3 witness the blooming of a second giant lily, giving birth to another beautiful fairy. Lotus greets her older sister, but Yu is confused since she doesn't have a sister, but decides to play along anyways. Despite Lotus's hostility to Yuen, Yu lifts her skirt and tells her master that she's ready to be eaten by him.
Yeah, boy.
Lotus wonders what she's doing, and Yu tells her that when reborn, she promised Yuen that she'll look cute, and that she would let him eat her when they reunite. Lotus says she'll help her sister with her promise, and the 2 look to Yuen with a cute pose, and tell him that they're both ready to be eaten. Yuen's virgin brain is overwhelmed, as Faye gets ready to spank the dirty boy. After putting them back into their seed, Yuen heads to see Ursi, who tells him that his life is in danger. The school has caught wind of the vampire army that is headed for the school, and has been informed that their target is not only the princess, but Yuen as well. She tells him that the school definitely isn't capable of defending him, so she tells him to fuck off with the princess, and to leave the school grounds immediately.
Damn!
Yuen and the princess head out together with Yuen's fairies, and not long after, they encounter a mighty dragon that sends out a fiery breath, targeting Yuen, shouting to hand over the fairies if he wants to live. Seeing that Yuen is capable of surviving his attack, the dragon introduces himself as none other than George, as he claims that he's of noble blood while flapping his mighty wings. The dragon continues to make more threats, but after Yuen says that they beat a level 8 knight, George cowers in fear since he is only a level 3 dragon. Yuen says that he'll duel George without any help from the fairies, so George accepts, thinking the tiny human can't do anything himself. But as George sends out his fireballs, Yuen easily blocks with his impenetrable shield, and summons his vines to tie George down, as George eventually admits defeat. Yuen asks for his reward, claiming that all dragons have treasure in their lair, but George says that he's broke, and instead gives him a dragon flute, claiming that he'll help them in times of trouble. The group travel to the Woody Lake, where they decide to stay and enjoy the beautiful scenery. At night, an attendant tells the group of a story about the lake, stating it was once filled with alluring lotus flowers, but overnight, the flowers all withered away, said to have been cursed when the heart of the lake was defiled. The story strikes the wrong chord for Lotus as she storms away in silence. Yuen chases after her, and when he tells her that he wants to help, she tells him that she's sick of his ugly face, and tells him that she can't wait to tear him up into pieces. But she tells him that she'll behave for now, since she doesn't want to make her sister unhappy. He asks her why she hates him, but she tells him that she doesn't remember having lost all her memories when she was reborn, but has a feeling that she has seen his ugly ass before. Suddenly, she begins to act deranged, claiming that she doesn't want to remember anything, and as she looks to Yuen, she tells him that it's all his fault. She attacks him, but she finds out about the backlash that occurs when striking her master. Just then, 3 vampires make their appearance, telling Yuen to give up his fairies or to face his demise. Faye and Yu come by his side as the two sides prepare to fight. Yuen calls for George, who immediately makes his appearance, but to Yuen's surprise, George sides with the vampires, telling them that he'll assist if they spare him one of the fairies, as Yuen can't believe he was stupid enough to trust a dragon named George. The fairies face off against the vampires, while George finds an opening to attack Yuen, successfully forcing him to retreat into the water. Yuen uses his vines, but George came prepared this time, and coats himself in a shield of flames. As they sink into the water, Yuen activates a new skill he learned after acquiring 2 more fairies, trapping George in a big ball of his spiritual force. Suddenly, a magic circle is activated at the bottom of the lake, as Yuen and George are unable to escape the power of the seal. Yuen wakes up in the fairy world, and is immediately greeted by future Yuen, who tells him that another game event is about to start. Just then, a girl who looks like Lotus appears from the forest, and this time, it seems as if Yuen is able to interact with the people in the fairy world. She sees an injury on Yuen, so she wraps him up with bandages and makes her way back home. Yuen asks her for her name, and she tells him it's Lian, as Yuen finds out that Lian is actually not Lotus, but Lotus's sister. After she leaves, future Yuen switches places with Yuen, making him the ghost, unable to interact with the world. Future Yuen sniffs out George hiding in a tree, and commands George to follow his instructions, threatening to have him as dinner if he doesn't. He tells George to investigate Lian, and bring back his findings once done. When he returns, George tells future Yuen that she picks lotus flowers for a living, and has a bright personality loved by the people of the town. She has a younger sister who was struck with an unfortunate disease that will claim her life if left unchecked, so Lian has been doing her best to find a cure. He then heads into town, implementing his plan to seduce Lian, telling her that he can help her find a cure for her sister. He assists her while she searches for an ingredient inside a cave, where she's looking for the tiger herb. But future Yuen stops her, realizing that the one she spotted is part of a sleeping monster, and that she should go towards the wall where the tiger herbs can be picked. George, however, is up to no good as he wakes up the monster that immediately attacks Lian. Future Yuen saves her on time, and the two quickly make their way out of the cave, but they end up at a ledge, and are cornered by the big monster. Lian picks up a legendary drop, strong enough to slay the gods, and charges at the demonic dog, but her accuracy rating is low as she misses her attack. Future Yuen grabs her, and jumps across to the other side of the valley, as I have no clue why he didn't just do that from the start. Lian passes out from all the excitement, as future Yuen goes back across before taking a direct paw to the face. But he shows off his power, stopping the attack with just a single finger, and after jumping up to the monster's head, future Yuen flicks his finger, which is enough to knock the beast out cold. He sees a scratch, and immediately realizes that George was the culprit who woke up the beast. George begs for his life, so future Yuen commands him to pick some leaves for him in bushes at the bottom of the cliff. George picks the tiger herbs for future Yuen, just in time before Lian wakes up, who thanks him for getting her the ingredients. But after she tries them out, Lian cries for putting future Yuen's life in danger, claiming that the herbs didn't work, and all his efforts were for nothing. But he comforts her, telling her that she tried her best. He asks her what she thinks of him, and she tells him that he's the most kindest person she has ever met. But he tells her that he has a secret, telling her that he knew about the cure for his sister this whole time. However, he tells her that he dare not say, since he knows that she'll jump at the opportunity to obtain the final ingredient. which carries an extraordinary price. But despite his warning, Leanne pleads him to tell her, claiming that she'll do anything he wishes. He tells her that the cost is a significant amount of a sibling's blood, enough to guarantee that she will not survive. Not only that, but her sister must kill Leanne herself for the cure to work. She tells future Ewan that she'll do anything to cure her sister, even at the cost of her own life, and asks him to help her in her plan to get her sister to hate Leanne. When she gets home, Leanne greets her sister, Lotus, who is Leanne's identical twin sister, and the one who is struck with the disease. Lotus occasionally heads out for a walk with a single hairpin and a pink outfit, contrary to Leanne's double hairpin and blue outfit. And despite knowing who she really is, future Ewan calls out for Leanne, making Lotus believe that he thinks she's Leanne, and telling her that he's in love with her. Lotus is surprised at the confession, realizing that Leanne had a boy in her life. He grabs her hand and tells her to be his girl. Surprised by the riz, she tells him that she's leaving, as he tells her that he'll meet her here again tomorrow. The next day, Lotus disguises herself as Leanne again, and decides to meet him the next day, hoping to make sure that her sister is in good hands before she dies from the disease. But future Ewan has the ability to seduce any girl he's with, staring straight into her soul, as Lotus begins to fall for him too. They spend a beautiful day in the lake, and he begins to instill the seed of hate against her sister, claiming that they talked about leaving her sick sister behind just the other day, and spending the rest of their lives together, just the two of them. Shocked that her sister may betray her, Lotus coughs up blood and passes out. We then see the real Leanne, who witnessed the events, thanking him for playing along with this game. On the final third day, future Ewan tells the disguised Leanne about the ritual, and when she finds out about the cost of a sibling's blood, Lotus is devastated by the revelation. On the fourth day, the real Leanne and future Ewan put the nail in the coffin, meeting up in an area easy for Lotus to eavesdrop on their conversation, as the two put on an act. Leanne shouts that she's tired of taking care of her sister all these years as she embraces him, claiming that she'll put scorpion blood in her sister's medicine tonight so that they can finally be free of her. Lotus hears everything, completely buying the act as tears flood down her face, coughing up more blood in the process. At night, Leanne hands the medicine to Lotus and tells her that today, a man confessed his feelings for her. She makes dinner while telling her more about the man, as Lotus grabs a knife from under her pillow. While Leanne says that she'll get married to him, Lotus lifts her knife in the air, realizing that with the swing of the knife, she'll be able to take Leanne's place and marry future Ewan without anyone finding out who she really is. But despite the hatred building inside her, Lotus cries, unable to take the life of the sister she loves. Leanne tells her to do it, shouting that everything can be hers, before turning around and grabbing her hand, helping her with her task. And after it's done, Leanne tells her to carry her into the lake, telling her that the man will be there to cure her disease. With her final breath, Leanne tells Lotus not to cry, telling her to live her best life, and once she passes on, she'll be waiting for her in the afterlife with open arms. After getting to the lake, Lotus's guilt of her betrayal and pain of losing her sister becomes too much for her to bear. And instead of looking to future Ewan for the cure, Lotus picks up her sister and carries her into the lake, determined to pass with her sister together. Future Ewan never had a cure from the start, and knew that this would be the outcome, so that he can acquire both sisters as his fairies. He promises Lotus that if she chooses the path of a fairy, she'll be reborn next to her sister's side once again. And with a touch of the lotus, a beam of light shoots up at the sky, planting a giant lotus flower that would be Lotus's shackles until her master sets her free. Future Ewan explains to Ewan that he was expecting 2 fairies with this event, but Leanne wasn't able to complete her evolution, and ended up passing to the afterlife. Ewan rages after hearing this, shouting that he's the biggest piece of trash he's ever met, going to endless bounds just to accomplish his selfish goals. But future Ewan easily knocks him down, and tells him that he barely influenced this one, claiming that all decisions were made by the sisters. As he cries, realizing his helplessness in this situation, Lotus's soul appears, and tells Ewan that she has felt the sincerity of his heart. Even though she can't change what has happened, she tells him that the warmth he has given her has helped her deal with what she has done and move forward. She materializes into form and kisses him, thanking him for everything. And finally, the two teleport back to the real world, ready to face their foe. On the way, George latches onto Ewan, Pinky promising this time that he'll do anything for Ewan if he takes him back. Ewan agrees, as the two surface up to the real world together. Meanwhile, Rai glares down at a sleeping Anne, and as he steps up, he bows to Her Majesty while shedding tears of sorrow. Determined to complete his mission, he draws his sword, powers up, and swings at his target, but a barrier knocks him back. Anne wakes up from the noise and hugs Rai, who she's very happy to see, oblivious to his true intentions since she never found out. She tells him that she missed him and tells him that she's on an adventure and that he should come along. Filled with regret, Rai apologizes to her right before a blast startles the princess. They go outside, where Faye is seen standing her ground. Lotus and Yu get themselves restrained, as Faye is forced to fight on her own. Anne calls out to Faye, believing that Rai is here to help them. But as Lotus and Yu remove their bonds, Rai charges at the two, knocking them back with ease. Just then, Ewan makes a flashy appearance with George, distracting with a fireball while getting the princess to safety. The two sides face off, and Ewan is able to merge with Lotus, transforming into his water fairy form. He shoots to the ground as Rai charges in with an attack, but he's easily blocked using the bounciness of the water, and with a snap of his finger, Ewan freezes Rai in place. In an instant, Ewan grabs another's face, sending him flying as an icicle, before helping Faye. He floods the fourth in a massive tide and pierces him with ice. The fifth goes after the princess, but Ewan sends out a beam to remove the bonds on George, before punching him with incredible force to the gut, following up with an uppercut and a colossal kick that sends him to the ground. Rai finally releases himself from his restraints and tells Ewan that he won't underestimate him like the last time, awakening his full power as his sword gets an erection. Ewan tells him that he'll respect the erection and go all out himself, calling for Faye as Ewan combines the power of the two fairies. After using just his aura to put Rai on his knees, Ewan tells him that he's too weak, lighting a fire in Rai as he attacks. The two clash, and Ewan flashes his moves, dancing around his opponent, before sending him flying back. He calls down his unlimited icicle works, overwhelming Rai, who is forced into a defensive stance. But Rai still finds a moment to charge up and use his shadow clone technique, charging against the onslaught and unleashing his counterattack. However, one who merges with two fairies has powers that rival a god, as we witness Ewan's destructive power. As Rai lies completely defenseless, Ewan tells him that this is his ultimate attack, charging up his massive spirit bomb. When suddenly, Anne puts her arms out, telling Ewan that Rai will die, and pleading him to get back to his senses. Just then, Ewan looks around at all his enemies on the brink of death, realizing that he lost himself in the excitement of his own power. He sends the ball up above and blows it up away from danger. He unfuses with his fairies and apologizes to the princess, and then scolds Rai, asking him why he's fighting alongside the enemy. She hugs him and tells him that she won't accept his betrayal, pleading him to come back to her side. But he gently pushes her aside before getting up and walking to the distance. She asks if they'll see each other again, and he tells her that they'll meet again soon before disappearing in the distance. Suddenly, beams of light shoot up to the sky, coating the lake with the lotus flowers that have stayed dormant for decades. Lotus then thanks Ewan for everything he's done, helping her to accept what she's done in her past so that she can move forward. But she claims that the lake is the home of her sister's soul, telling him that she wishes to protect it forever. Ewan accepts her decision, as Lotus transfers her soul back into the lotus flower from whence she came. As the sun rises, Faye compliments Ewan for being more than just an ugly dude, and reconfirms that she wants him to work on her inner world with him together.
Yeah, boy.
What a legend for making it to the end. See you in this next video.